Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Week 13 and welcome to the PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail today in Week 13 and the rest of your very short fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, how was your Thanksgiving? We did have a lot of fantasy points on Thanksgiving between if you had the Laporta Potty who had his best game of the season. Maybe you had, and by you, I mean anybody out there. Tyreek Hill had his best game of the season. Jaden Reed, I was facing both of them. Congratulations to me. Hopefully you played the Cowboys defense like Nick told you to. I told you to play Jonnu Smith. Friday, I told you to play Brock Bowers. Kelsey had a decent-ish game. Nick told you to play Mahomes. So anyway, there's my soliloquy for Week 13. Nick, how are you feeling heading into Week 13, knowing that we are 4 games down? I know you have 6-ish leagues or something like that to worry about.
I am competitive in all my leagues at the moment. I just hope it's that way in 2 weeks. The goal really is get in the playoffs, and then it's anybody's game.
Yep.
So that's what we're hoping for at this point. All my teams are 500 or above. 2 of them I'm the 1 seed in. The other ones are all at that 500 mark, fighting for the playoff spot. So we're right there. We're right there. Big Thanksgiving, a lot of fantasy points from a lot of low over/under games this week. So that was very good to see. So we'll see how the rest of the week goes.
And nobody really underperformed. Gibbs didn't have a great game for Gibbs standards. Trying to think of who else. Neighbors is fine. You had 15. You could have had a couple more. I don't think anybody. CeeDee Lamb, I guess, was your big underperformer on Thanksgiving. But in terms of star fantasy, Waddle, I guess maybe. But like Hill had a good game. Jaden Reed had a good game. Josh Jacobs had a good game. So in terms of fantasy production on your 3 games, all your stars kind of performed. And even on Friday, Mahomes showed out. I guess like the Chiefs running backs, that was a situation we were worried about and watching, but. It's going to take time to figure that situation out. But for the most part, for your 4 games, you kind of got what you expected and you got the fantasy points that you needed. So heading into Week 13, obviously there's 2 weeks left until the playoffs. If you include this week, there are bye weeks this week. There are also bye weeks next week. And then your fantasy football playoffs, at least in most league formats, will start. If this is your first time joining us, thank you for joining the PrimeTime Fantasy Football Podcast. We do this show every single Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, available on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, where you can drop all of your fantasy football-related questions. I guess we shouldn't even answer trade questions at this point. I can't even imagine that there's trade deadlines that are out this far, but I guess if you trade questions, we'll answer trade questions. We'll answer all of your lineup questions. We'll answer your start-sit questions. Answer your waiver wire questions, stashing teams, stashing defenses. So with that said, we will get into the show. Drop your questions down below. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the queue of questions. Joe's already in here dropping the fire emojis. And you'll see the queue that you're in if you're on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, you won't see the queue, but you'll see your questions. If you're on Instagram, we won't be able to pop your questions up like we can with Joe here. We can read them off. It's actually in a separate tab on my computer, is just how Instagram works. So I do recommend going to YouTube to check us out. So without further ado, we do have some questions here. Cap for life. Let's start with the first one here. Gentlemen, he's a Dolphins fan. Sorry about that. Bench stash, Michael Wilson, Brandon Cooks, or Will, I'm assuming it's Will Dissly.
Yeah, I'd go Michael Wilson of the 3 of them. I don't love the upside for Brandon Cooks, especially with no Dak in that offense. I know it's looked a little bit better the last few weeks, but they've been relying on Schoonmaker, I feel like it is. And they've really pivoted that offense entirely. Rico Dowdle's gotten a lot of touches the last few weeks. Michael Wilson's probably the only one that could get starting reps in your lineup, I would guess, of the 3 of them at this point of the year. He has the highest upside of the 3 of them. He has the highest snap share of the 3 of them. So to me, that would be the one if those are your 3 options.
I think I'll go with Dissly. I want to look at his numbers from the last couple weeks. So a lot of people were asking about Dissly a couple weeks ago. His last 5 games are 9.1, 2.9, 8, 18, and 8.7. I would stash Disley just for the sake of if you do need an extra tight end, if for whatever reason you're worried about having a backup tight end, he's probably the best one available. But I would rather you stash a defense, if I'm being particularly honest with you. I wouldn't stash any of these guys. I would stash a defense that has a good matchup in the playoffs. Second question is any word on Devontae Smith? So for your Devontae Smith owners, which includes me, I benched Devontae Smith Thursday for Roma Dunze, and Dunze did not have a good game, so I did not make the best lineup decision. But the latest update we have on Devontae Smith is that he has a hamstring. He's questionable. I'm not sure how much he practiced this week, if I'm being particularly honest with you. The report I read from early this morning / late last night, I believe from Schefter, was basically that he's going to test it pregame, and it's a 4:00 game. So remember that. It's a 4:00 game. He's going to test it pregame, but they are not hopeful. So if you're putting Devontae Smith in your lineup for that 4:00 game, you will need to have a backup ready to go, whether it's somebody else in the 4:00 game, the 8:00 game, the Monday game, maybe a backup receiver on the Eagles. But if you have another option, I would play your other option. It does not look like he's going to play. All right, next question from Joe. Should I start Tank Dell going up against, I don't know any of the games today. Is it the Titans? No, he had the Titans last week. Tank Dell's going up against the Jaguars, or Darnell Mooney going up against the Chargers. I mean, matchup-wise in my head, it sounds like a Tank Dell pro matchup.
Yeah, it's just hard to bench Mooney with how good he's been, especially with Atlanta now coming off. I think they had the bye last week.
The bye. The Jaguars allow the 4th most fantasy points to receivers, an average of 32.8. The Chargers are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Surrender the 12th lowest points to wide receivers. So it's not a crazy number, but I would say your safer play is probably Tank Dell, and your higher boomer bust is probably Darnell Mooney.
So in his career,
Dell hasn't been great this season. Like, he really hasn't been reliable. Even without Stephon Diggs, he really hasn't been reliable.
Yeah, so last year, he had both his division games against the Jags. He had 10 catches and 2 touchdowns for roughly 200 yards in those 2 games. So he's been pretty solid in that matchup. So I would roll with him.
All right. Cap for life says, I'm putting in Vele over Devontae Smith. Thanks, bros. Yeah, good call on that one. I think he's been pretty good over the last couple of weeks, and that's the guy that we've told you to pick up off the waivers. I told a couple of you guys on the Sunday morning live show last week that he's a guy you should probably stash and should probably check out. So from Nick, messed up starting Lamb. You did not mess up. Not your fault. We actually told you to start Lamb if you listened to our Thanksgiving special. You can't bench him. Like, I know he didn't have a good game, but he's just not a guy that you could bench. So don't be hard on yourself for benching your first round pick all pro receiver. 6-6 fighting for a playoff spot. I feel you on that. Start 2. Joe Mixon, Puka Nacua, Jonathan Taylor, half PPR. I think Jonathan Taylor is your first play. I mean, I'm sorry. I think Joe Mixon here is your first play. I mean, you're looking at a guy who is your, let me just go to the little list we got here. Joe Mixon is your running back 7 on the season. He's only had under double digits twice, including last week's one stinker. But his average is 21.1 on the season. Like, I don't think you could bench Joe Mixon. The Jags are bad everywhere. They allow the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs at 26.1. As for the Rams, because I'm interested in Puka Nacua, they are facing the Saints. And I feel like they don't have a corner at this point. No Lattimore. The Saints at the moment allow the 7th most fantasy points to receivers, an average of 30.1. I would bench Jonathan Taylor, who's been one of the biggest busts of the season, and we've spoken about that one before.
Totally agreed. That's exactly where I'm at.
All right. From the Hattie, should I flex Marvin Harrison going up against, I'm going to learn the schedule really quick here, the Vikings, or Brian Robinson going up against the Titans? So, Nick, Brian Robinson is a tougher matchup, I believe, of the two, but Austin Eckler's gone to the IR, so it is all the Brian Robinson show over there with the Commanders, but that offense has slowed down over the last month or so. So, what do you think about this one?
I like Marv. I like his upside against that secondary. I like Kyler being able to roll out, make plays for Marv against Minnesota. Minnesota's pass rush is big. Kyler's been the most effective for Marv when he's rolled outside of the pocket, so that will give him the upside, but he has been so up and down. Nick and I always say this, and sometimes it's situational. If your projection says you need the safe amount of floor points, go with Brian Robinson. If you need the high upside, go with Marvin Harrison Jr. Eckler being out definitely helps B-Rob, but that team runs running back by committee. I expect Jeremy McNichols to get some touches in this game too. I
completely agree with Nick there. I would take Brian Robinson if you want a safe floor, but if you do want a higher upside, take Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
Cap says Devontae Smith points total just updated. He's trending. I haven't seen anything because we're on the show. I would check Twitter. That's going to be your best friend. However, Devontae Smith plays at 4 o'clock. Bailey plays tomorrow at 8. So you could actually wait until about 3:30ish to make this decision. And you will know by 2:30, 3 o'clock if Devontae Smith is actually active or not. I normally like to say put your star in there if he's on the field, but a game 10 decision for a hamstring, which is an injury that normally trends to miss a week or two. I don't think he's going to play. And if he does play, I could feel like he might play a couple snaps and then sub out.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's definitely a concern. I would be fine benching Devontae Smith for Vele at this point because the workload for Vele has been really good.
From Scott Green, morning guys. Should I be worried about playing Juwan Jennings in tonight's game, or should I give it to somebody else? I think you should be worried. I mean, it's going to be like a blizzard. I have Debo. I'm benching Juwan Jennings in a league that I'm pretty deep in, and I actually have Debo in the league was in my starting lineup, but I'm a little bit worried about Debo Samuel myself. The Bills have also been really tough on wide receivers this year. Let me get the stat here. The Bills have allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, an average of 23.4. I would like to know who your other options are because I am a little bit concerned about every player in that game, knowing it will be pretty much big snow conditions.
Yeah, I agree with Nick on that one. I also don't know, was Purdy officially ruled out of the game? Because I'm looking at
Purdy's playing. So as far as we know, and again, Kyle Shanahan we can't trust. Kyle Shanahan said that Purdy's going to play barring any setback, but he's questionable and projected to play.
I am going to guess he's not playing because someone that pays attention to the sports lines, the line was -2 all week, and it's moved to -6 in Buffalo's favor. Last week, the line moved 4 points when Brock Purdy was ruled out. So I am going to guess that Brock Purdy is not going to be playing tonight.
Interesting.
If he is playing, betting on San Francisco is a huge upside in that one, but just because where the line would be. But I'm going to guess the sports books are telling you Brock Purdy is not playing tonight.
All right. From John Caldwell, would you play Najee Harris or TJ Hawkinson over Devontae Adams PPR? So I guess the question is, which one of these three do you want to play in PPR? Adams is my stinky Seahawks defense today. Actually, the Jets might win this game. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. Let's see. Devontae Adams' last few games. I always like looking at the last few games. I got to scroll really far down to find Devontae Adams on this list. Like really far down. I can't. Maybe I missed him. Maybe if you beat wide receiver 43. So his last 5, 6, 9.4, 22, 9, and 13. Najee's always a fun little wild card. Najee's playing the Bengals, who are pretty bad. I mean, the Bengals allow. Well, actually, against running backs, they're not.
It's their passing attacks, but their passing defense has been so bad, no one needs to run on them.
They're actually running defense actually pretty good. They're actually the 9th best against the run. I wonder what Najee's done against the Steelers, though. He's usually pretty good.
I have it here. So his last 3 games against the Steelers, he has 90 rushing yards, 99 rushing yards, 78 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 1 touchdown.
Okay.
One of these games, he's got 6 targets in, the other 2 no targets. So it's actually been a pretty safe floor play.
And his last 4 games this season are 16, 11, 13, and 7. 3 of those are right after the bye. I'm inclined to not play TJ Hawkinson just because he's a tight end, but I think he had a ridiculous stat line last week, so maybe I'm just
Jefferson's due for a game.
He is due for a game. TJ Hawkinson's last 4 since coming back from the injury, 5.7, 15, 3, and 18. I would say if you want a safe floor, go with Najee. If you want a boomer bust, go with Devontae Adams. Same thing with Hawkinson. I would probably play Adams. But if you want a safer floor, play Najee.
I agree.
All right, from Joe, should I look to pivot off of Josh Allen? I have Stafford, and waiver options are Kirk, Geno, Anthony Richardson, May, Jameis, Carr. I don't think you could ever pivot off of Allen, even if I'm worried about the snow conditions. He is a quarterback that does run a lot. I just don't think you could pivot off a guy like Josh Allen. Yeah.
I agree. He's also like the kind of player that is weatherproof because of his mobility and things like that. So I'm not overly concerned. I would still roll him out.
If you're going to play anybody over him out of that list, I think I would play Stafford, but I still wouldn't switch it up.
Yeah, I agree.
From Deshaun, what's up, fellas? PPR, start Marquise Valdes-Scantling, Vele, or Xavier Legette at the flex.
I mean, we talked about Vele already. It's been a very safe workload the last few weeks. I'd probably roll him out there versus the risk reward of MVS or Xavier Legette, who I'm coming to like a lot, but I am still not at the point where I'm comfortably willing to start him.
I'm with you on this one. The Browns allow 30.6 points to the wide receivers. That is the sixth most in fantasy football. On top of that, Bo Nix has made his way into the top 10. We spoke about Bo Nix a lot on our weekly Monday recap shows, and that Bo Nix should basically be starting in your lineup every week at this point. I want to grab Bailey's last 3 games or so. Last 3, 13, 10, and 14. So he's becoming a favorite target of Bo Nix next to Cortland Sutton. So I think we're in agreement with that one. From Scott Green. Okay, so this is the Juwan Jennings question. I'm playing Kupp and Judy, have Westbrook Akini on the bench, could pick up Legette or Adonai Mitchell off of waivers. This is full PPR. I think I would still start the upside of Jennings here, Nick. Even if I don't love the snow game, Westbrook Akini seems like you're looking for a deep shot or a touchdown, or you're getting a goose egg. I really don't want to start Jerry Jeudy. I think I would rather start Juwan Jennings than all these other guys.
I'd still go Westbrook Akine just because the touchdown upside has been great. It's 6 touchdowns in his last 7 games.
But at some point that has to end, no?
We say it every time, and it just continues. So
Yeah.
I'd still ride out the momentum of it. Up against Washington, too. Washington's in a get-right spot here. They're going to look to put points on the board in this matchup, and Tennessee is going to have a matchup against a secondary that's not very good. I also don't think Lattimore's playing in this game either. So
yes, Lattimore is out.
So that should give you some good upside, touchdown upside there.
All right. Playing against Garrett Wilson, if that matters. That doesn't change my opinion. I would still start Devontae Adams if you want a boom bust, or start Najee Harris if you want a safer floor. Doesn't change my opinion. Sean asks, is Hunt droppable now? I would say no. I mean, he got the same amount of carries as Pacheco. They split carries. I'm not sure what the split share was, snap share. Really neither of the yards per carry for these two backs were good. So Pacheco had one big gash for 34 yards. So Pacheco went 7 for 44. Kareem Hunt went 7 for 15. So Pacheco had one gash of 34 yards, which ups his average to 6.3. But let's take away the 34. So 10 divided by 6, because it would have been 10 yards divided by 6 carries. Pacheco's yards per carry would have been at 1.6. Kareem Hunt stands at 2.1. So I don't think either of them looked good. I guess the offensive line really didn't look good. I mean, Mahomes had pressured the entire game. The Raiders' front 7 really kind of dominated the line of scrimmage. So I would say Hunt is not droppable. He's been too productive to drop. If you're in a situation like me where you have Jonathan Taylor on bye next week and maybe you don't have another running back and you've been relying on Hunt, he's still a guy I think you could play because the Chiefs are giving him time on the field. I would not willingly want to play him, but the Chiefs are going to run the ball a lot, and he's been very, very productive this season. So he's one of the few handcuffs I'm actually okay with keeping, also knowing that Pacheco is coming off the injury and there's a chance of risk of re-injury. So unless you can go get like Gus Edwards, and there's no way you could go get Gus Edwards at this point, but J.K. Dobbins is put on the 4-week IR. If you have J.K. Dobbins, he's borderline. I mean, I guess he could come back championship week if I'm doing my math correctly, but you're in trouble if you don't have Gus Edwards and you do have J.K. Dobbins. So my point being, I would only drop Hunt if you're getting somebody that you know is going to start in your rotation for the playoffs. If it's not a player that's going to start, I would keep Hunt on your bench.
I agree with that. I think that I agree. Gus Edwards is the one that jumps to mind if you were going to cut him, I would wait. I mean, you don't need to drop him now because it's Friday, but tune into the Tuesday waiver show. Maybe it's Kamani Vidal that gets all the touches for the Chargers, and then we say, all right, maybe Hunt is the most droppable for him from your lineup. I'm not willing to drop him yet. He was the third down back. He played the Kareem Hunt role that he played in Cleveland for years, which worked out well for him. He still ended the game with 4 or 5 targets in there. He got a lot of the snap share, so I'm not rushing to drop him. And we know Kansas City likes to rotate their weapons. So if they choose to shut down Pacheco for a couple games, let him continue to get healthy before the playoffs, whatever they choose to do, I think Hunt's going to have some more upside and some more games ahead of him.
All right. Keep asking those questions, guys. This is the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast, Week 13 live show. We do that live show every single Sunday, 8:30 a.m., available on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to answer all of your fantasy football questions. We're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Lineup decisions, start sits, injuries, waivers, etc. If you're watching live, make sure to drop a like on this video and any video that you do watch in the future. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so you get notifications every single time that we go live or post a new video. We give you 2 new videos during the week, available on Tuesdays and Fridays. The Tuesday show is about waiver wire and a weekly recap. The Friday shows are all boom and all bust teams for the upcoming week. So you can check those out, available on YouTube in an audio or video format, or you can check them out on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Please give us a 5-star rating and a review if you're listening on an audio streaming platform. From Scott Green, Kirk Cousins going up against
Chargers.
The Chargers. I just read this off. And then Russell Wilson going up against the Bengals.
I like Russell in this spot a lot more.
I think I do too.
Higher over under, easier secondary. Just checks those 2 boxes, which works for me for fantasy.
The Bengals at this point have allowed the Bengals defense has been so bad, but they're not bottom 10 in really anything in terms of fantasy football. Quarterbacks they are. They have the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks at 21.3. And as for Russell Wilson, he has, I'm trying to find him in the quarterback list. There's no way he's this low though. He is really low. Oh, I guess because he started late. I guess that's why.
Yeah.
Since starting for the Steelers, he is 24, 13, 19, 7, and 13. So his floor has been kind of safe. I think I would start Russell Wilson. It's because we spoke about Kirk Cousins a little bit throughout the season, but Kirk Cousins hasn't exactly had the best season fantasy-wise. I'm trying to find his numbers too. He's quarterback 17. His average is only 15.2. I mean, he's had a couple stinkers this season. So I would start Russell Wilson.
Yep.
All right. From Dale Sullivan. Happy Thanksgiving, Primetime fam. Michael Pittman going up against the Colts have an easier matchup this week, but I can't remember.
Patriots.
They have the Patriots. And then Calvin Ridley going up against the Commanders. No Lattimore.
I like Ridley. I mean, I've been all over the Titans receivers for the last few weeks. The upside's been there. The Titans offense, Will Levis actually has not looked horrible the last few weeks. I know he still tends to make a Will Levis decision now and then, but outside of the 1 to 2 bad decision-making games that throw the football game, he's actually looked pretty good as a passer, and his receivers have benefited greatly from it. So
I can't dunk on him like I have been.
No.
Calvin Ridley's been pretty good. I mean, his last 5, 22, 12, 25, 9, and 14. I would play Calvin Ridley. I think he's going to have a big game today. I would get Ridley in your lineup.
Yep.
From the show on PPR, Zach Ertz, Kyle Pitts, or Noah Fant. My gut tells me Pitts based off name, but I know he's facing the Chargers, so you might get the Derwin James coverage. The Chargers are about 12th against tight ends. Philly has Baltimore. Baltimore is in the middle of the pack against tight ends, and I would not want to play Noah Fant with these other 2 names. I think I would lean Ertz just based off the talent alone.
I'd go with Pitts. I
meant Pitts. I meant Pitts. I don't know why I said
same
Pitts.
thing I say about Taysom Hill, where you got to ride the ups and downs. You take the good with the bad. That's the same exact way you got to see Kyle Pitts. He might have the bad week, but he will every single week have the upside to be a 20-plus point performance, and that's kind of what you want from him. So you take the variance.
From John Caldwell, Russell Wilson against the Bengals or Kyler Murray against... I feel like I just read this one off. It's not the Chargers. Who is it? The Cardinals have... The Titans? No, it's not the Titans. Minnesota. Okay. So Kyler against the Vikings or Russell Wilson against the Bengals. 6-point rushing, 4-point passing. I think I'd rather take the talent of Kyler.
Yeah, to my point about Kyle Pitts, you probably have to do the same thing with Kyler Murray. He gives you some of those really, really bad games, and then he gives you some of those really good games. It's a good matchup for the receivers. The Vikings allow the most or second most points to the position, to wide receiver position. Game script should be good. Over under in the game is 44.5, which is kind of the lower half of this week, but should still be a pretty good scoring game.
All right. We have no more questions in the queue at the moment, so keep asking those questions, guys, and we'll keep answering them. We'll jump now to our game-by-game preview, mainly just to talk about injuries, maybe anything else we're kind of looking for. I did not look at the weather for every game, but I do know that the Buffalo game is supposed to have some pretty nasty weather. From Dale, need 2 wide receiver for a different team. PPR, Quentin Johnston going up against the the Falcons. Marvin Harrison Jr. going up against the Vikings. Khalil Shakir going up against the 49ers in the Snow Bowl, or Veely going up against the Browns. I don't want to play Shakir based on the snow. I think they would play Marvin Harrison Jr. and Veely. The Quentin Johnson goose egg on Monday night was very bad. Like he hasn't had a game like that this season. He's been very, very consistent, and I get that bad games happen, but that was really bad for you guys that probably needed like 2 or 3 points from Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, I Marvin's my first, and then I want the Monday night matchup. I want a piece of that. So I'm with Nick, Marvin, and Bailey.
Okay, so we're in agreement with that. All right, so first game we have here, 1:00 slate. The Chargers at the Falcons. The big injury here is that J.K. Dobbins is out with the knee. He is on the IR. I guess you kind of have to keep him on your team and put him in the IR slot if you're going to make the playoffs, but hopefully you got J.K. Dobbins or maybe even Kamani Vidal. Aside from that, there's really no other injuries to talk about on this one. The Chargers coming off big game of Monday Night Football, and the Falcons coming off the bye. Defensively, I don't think they're top or bottom really anything, both teams. I'm going to just take a quick look.
The Chargers are one of the best defenses in football.
They give a lot of points recently, though. The Chargers do allow the fewest points to running backs. Receivers, they're middle of the pack. The Falcons allow a lot of points to receivers. They're both just kind of middle of the pack here on tight ends.
The Chargers are the only team in football that allow less than 16 points per game this year. They are one of the best defenses in football this season. I mean, the big question is it the Gus Edwards all show, or is it we going to see split with Kamani Vidal? I have picked up Vidal in a few leagues. I want him as my stash going into this week. He's a very easy player to decide if you want to cut him or keep him after this week for your waiver decisions. At this point of the year, if you are in the playoffs, you are stashing your defenses. If you are still speculative, if you lost a running back, like Kamani Vidal is a very good player at this late in the year to stash. He's the prime example of someone that we'd want.
Yep. All right. Half PPR from Deshaun. Cortland Sutton going up against the Browns. James Conner just got a new contract going up against the Vikings. Michael Pittman going up against the Patriots. Javonte Williams going up against the Browns. And at we'll do Superflex question next. So I think it's kind of between Sutton and Connor. I mean, the Vikings have been pretty good against running backs. They allow the second fewest points to running backs at 14.6. So my gut tells me to play Sutton, who's facing the Browns, who allow the 6th most fantasy points to receivers at 30.6.
Just give me 1 sec, because I feel like Connor has been I don't want to say defensive proof, but I feel like he's been one of the better performers against the tough defenses.
He's been pretty good. He's been pretty consistent.
So the Chargers and the Jets were the 2 best defenses against the run that he's played, 17.2, 22.3. So he has been solid in those matchups. I do think the Vikings are a little bit better than them. But those are 2 teams that are top 10 against the run. So I think Connor will offer a safer floor than you might think in this matchup. So I think
you're right. I think you're right. I would
like
rather play Sutton. I mean, if I am Brian Flores and I am not a defensive coordinator by any means, I would say to myself, Kyler has looked shaky this year. Why would I let them beat me on the run? Let me let Kyler beat me and just stack the box. That's what I would personally do, at least. But
I think you'll also see some of the PPR upside of Connor here. I know it's half PPR, but you'll see a couple checkdowns throughout the game. He's kind of been a target machine throughout the season at the running back position.
Okay. From Stanley, Christian McCaffrey, Bucky Irving, worried about the weather and Sunday Night Football.
You got to go to the Superflex.
You're right. Yep. Sorry about that. Superflex question. Derek Carr going up against the man. We were just talking about the Saints. I'm all over the place today. Who did the Saints have? Do you remember?
Rams.
The Rams. Ugh, that's a gross game. Saints are going up against the Rams, and then Jameis Winston, our guy J-Bo, against the Broncos.
Just so you know, the Saints game against the Rams is the second highest over/under of the week.
I just looked at that, and I think that's partly in part because the Rams might cover that over/under themselves.
Well, they're only 2.5-point favorite. The implied point total in this game is like 27-23 or 26-24. Like right
that's absurd to me.
That's absolutely nuts.
I would play Derek Carr. I mean, Jameis is good for at least a pick against the Broncos.
Yeah, that's true.
I do love Jameis, but he's good for.
Well, then here's the question: since it's super flex, would you rather play Derek Carr or Courtland Sutton?
Carr. He'll get more points than Courtland Sutton.
I agree.
From Stanley, McCaffrey or Bucky Irving, worried about the weather. McCaffrey's going to be in your lineup every single week.
I'm a pull the trigger. I'd go Bucky Irving. Easiest bet. Carolina allows the most points to the running back position. Christian McCaffrey has not looked great. He did not look great without Purdy last week. Snow game, not a very good formula for a guy that's been playing in that warm weather for the last few seasons. I think we have reached the point where Christian McCaffrey, with his age and his injury history, is A, not matchup proof, and B, not a safe floor play anymore. I don't think he is that anymore. Take the name out of it. Look at the numbers. It tells you the same story. Bucky Irving has been an absolute monster this season. I am rolling him out.
Okay.
Bold take of the week.
From Simp, full PPR pick 2. Brian Thomas Jr. going up against the Texans. Drake London going up against the Chargers. And George Pickens going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. It is full PPR. Okay. Let's see. The Bengals, they are about middle of the pack against receivers. The Chargers are good against wide receivers. Running backs are really good against. They're middle of the pack against receivers. And Brian Thomas Jr. against the Texans. The Texans are also just about middle of the pack against receivers. So defensively, they're all kind of in the same boat. Trevor is playing as far as we know today, so I should mention that. Drake London is your wide receiver 7 on the season with an average of 15.3. Brian Thomas is your wide receiver 14 with an average of 13.3. But in 2 of his last 3 games, he's under 10.
With Mac Jones.
Yeah, with Mac Jones. Pickens, since Russell Wilson took over, is 22, 11, 20, 16, and 8.8. I think I would play Pickens and the talent of London.
I would go London and Brian Thomas Jr. I'm probably a Pickens hater, to be honest, at this point. But
you are Pickens hater.
It is what it is. I really liked him when he came into the league. I have not been a fan of those diva Steelers receivers outside of my guy AB. I love my guy.
He's a Steeler receiver, that's for sure.
He's a diva, yeah.
From South Sea, hey, are you starting TJ Hawkinson or Taysom Hill? TJ Hawkinson is your much safer play in this one, but the Taysom Hill experience is either going to get you 5 points or 50. This is the question every week with Taysom Hill. So I would personally rather start TJ Hawkinson, knowing his talent, knowing he just came off an 18-point performance, and knowing that he's facing a Cardinals defense that really isn't that good. And I know they looked stronger against the Seahawks last week, but they're actually good against tight ends. Looks like 6th fewest fantasy points allowed to tight ends, but I would rather play the talent of Hawkinson.
Yeah, I agree. Taysom Hill, you can't really view as is the team good or bad against the tight end position. It's kind of tough because of the role he plays to project him. So I'm a big proponent. If you draft Taysom Hill, you play him every single week and you take the bad with the good. That's kind of the experience that you get. But I do think TJ Hawkinson is one of those 5 to 6 tight ends that you should lock in every week over Taysom Hill. So I would go with TJ here.
Sorry if we did not see your question about Williams. I'm not seeing it in the queue, so not sure why it didn't go through, but we have it here now. Asked before, but Williams may be out as well as the other team for Minnesota. Which Williams? I asked before, Williams may be out as well as the other team from Minnesota. Can you let us know what you mean by this question? Because I don't know which Williams you're talking about. I'm a little confused there.
Yeah, just skip down.
From Dale, need a wide receiver and a flex, PPR, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Warren, Darnell Mooney, and Vili. I think Garrett Wilson's, again, he's too talented to not be in your lineup most weeks. And then I think I would start Mooney over Vili, but it's very close. It's very, very, very close.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. If you need the upside, it's Mooney. If you need the floor, it's Bailey.
So he's the other tight end from Minnesota, I believe, who was out last week. That doesn't worry me. They like TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, it wouldn't make it.
I'm not worried at all about that. From John Caldwell, George Pickens versus the Bengals, 12-23-23, had 4 catches for 135 and 2 touchdowns with Mason Rudolph. George Pickens to the moon. Well, Mason Rudolph isn't playing.
No, he's saying with Russ, he's good. He should be better than that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Nick is really on. Nick's really on.
I am exhausted, man. I'm exhausted. From Mark Folkman, would you rather stash Tampa Bay or the Colts defense for the playoffs? For week 16-17, Tampa has the Cowboys and the Panthers, and the Colts go against the Titans and the Giants. Okay, this is a good question, Nick. This is a really good question because I don't really like either defense, but the matchups are really good. Man, I think I'd rather have whoever's facing the Giants. The Giants are really bad.
I would rather stash the Colts defense. Tampa's defense has not been very good. They've taken advantage of bad matchups, and granted, Carolina's doesn't look tough on paper. Cowboys don't look tough on paper, but last 2 weeks for Dallas have been good. Panthers, Tampa Bay, division rivalry. Don't know if we love that one, and the Panthers have been very good. You'll get to gauge it this week if Tampa and how they look against the Panthers, but they've been on a little bit of a roll now with Bryce Young the last few weeks. Where the Colts defense, same thing. You don't like that division matchup against the Titans because you don't really like these division matchups, but you really want that Giants championship week matchup. So if you're stashing this far out, that is the safest play of any of them. So I would take the Colts.
I agree with Nick there. I want to go against the Giants every week. From Deshaun, Gus Edwards going up against the Falcons. Those 2 games are ripping me apart today. I can't tell you why. Gus Edwards against the Falcons, Bucky Irving against the Panthers. I think Nick already knows his opinion on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go out on a limb. I think Bucky Irving will be the running back. I'll go top 3 running back on the week.
So what about Rachaad White? Are they both top 10 this week, you think?
I don't know if Rachaad White's top 10, but
it's a lot of PPR work.
Both of them are getting played. I mean, they should both be studs. I think Bucky has so much upside in this matchup. So
the Panthers are that bad. The Panthers are really that bad.
Off the bye, he was insane against the New York Giants, and now you get the Panthers, who are even worse against the running back position. So I think it's going to be the Bucky backfield. I think you're going to see Bucky be the workhorse of the backfield, and you'll see Rachaad White more as the third down back for the rest of the year. I think he's going to take over that role the rest of the season. I think Nick called it at the beginning of the year that you needed to stash him, and now that's after the bye, you're really going to watch him explode.
I called at the beginning of the year, and I got him nowhere. He's taking all my freaking leagues. All right, from John Caldwell. Lock Hawkinson over Taysom Hill in the flex. I have Kelsey as my tight end, or Najee over my tight end options in the flex. I mean, this sounds like a really bad take, but I just always want to put the skill position player in over the tight end. I think I would still put Najee over Hawkinson, even though Hawkinson's very, very talented.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I read off the last few games for Najee in this matchup.
His floor is very safe.
So the last 3 games that Najee had against the Bengals, 20 carries for 90 yards, 15 carries for 99 yards, 19 carries for 78 yards. It's about a 90 yards per game average, just under that, and 4 touchdowns in those last 3 games. So he has been a high touchdown guy in this game. He's been a high volume running back. He has 6 targets in one of those games, didn't get targets in the others, and actually receiving touchdowns. So 5 touchdowns in these last few games. So he's had his best performances in this matchup. So I don't think you can fade him at this point here.
From Sean, Kamani Vidal or Ray Davis in the snow. I think I like the upside of Vidal. I think more points will be scored in that game, but I think we don't exactly know how the Chargers backfield is going to shake itself out. I'll throw my hand up and say I want Gus Edwards to be the bell cow. I picked him up in my dynasty league. I don't have a running back 3. Taylor's on bye next week for me. So I really do hope that it's Gus Edwards, but I don't think we're going to know the situation until we actually see the backfield today.
Yeah, I agree. I would play Vidal. I wonder if you have other pivot options because I don't want to push either of these two out. They're good. They're both good stash plays, but I don't know if either is a must start at this point. And I don't think there's any teams on bye this week. So let's hear if you have some other pivot options off these two.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, from the Sean. PPR flex. Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Brian Robinson, pick 1. I think it has to be Garrett Wilson against my Seahawks, but I mean, there's some solid players in here. As much as like Brian Robinson, I think I'll take him out of this conversation knowing that the Titans are a tough defense and he could face a little bit of a committee situation. Flowers is facing the Eagles, who we spoke about it, I think, a little bit on the show, Nick, but yeah, I mean, I will say Darius Slay is out, I believe. I'm going to double check that real quick. I'm pretty sure Darius
Slay has not been the best corner over there. It's been between Mitchell and DeJean, they've been slamps over there.
JSN came into his own over the past couple of weeks, but I would still rather play the talent of Garrett Wilson.
You'll probably have Sauce on JSN all game.
What about DK?
DK will get DK will get DJ Reed because Reed is much bigger. DK's too big for Sauce.
Who's their slot corner? Is it Sauce normally?
No, they rotate a few different guys. But
JSN's going to play the slot a lot, I think.
All right. I mean, we'll see. Either way, I mean,
I would still rather Garrett Wilson.
I still want the floor upside. Although it is a Geno Smith revenge game.
It is a Geno. It's the first time he's ever faced the New York Jets as a starter, I think, in MetLife, or maybe just in MetLife. I should be at that game. Really upset. It was very, very close to going into the flights. Flights did not cooperate. $400 per flight. Not cool. All right. Dale Sullivan, half PPR, Hunter Henry or Kyle Pitts? Kyle Pitts.
Yep. Kyle Pitts.
You drafted him pretty high and you enjoy the ride. Full PPR, Will Dissly or Kyle Pitts? Kyle Pitts. Enjoy the Kyle Pitts ride.
Yep.
And the reason we're saying Kyle Pitts, guys, is because you drafted a guy who is insanely talented, great physical attributes. Kirk Cousins throws the ball a ton. He's had a couple really big games this season. These other tight ends you're mentioning aren't bad at all. Dissly, Henry, they are legitimate questions, but we will probably always vote Kyle Pitts unless you have like a Kelsey or somebody that's really butting heads there. All right, from Dale Sullivan, Kyron Williams against the Saints, Chase Brown against the Steelers, or Najee Harris against the Bengals. PPR need 2, left Dowdle on the bench. I don't blame you for leaving Dowdle on the bench. I've said it for weeks. I don't want to play any cowboy not named CeeDee Lamb. I mean, the Giants are bad. I don't blame you at all. These 3 players are too talented for you to put Dowdle over and over.
Yeah, I agree. I go with Kyron and Chase Brown, just the 2 that have been the best on the season.
Yes.
And both of them have the 2 highest upside. Najee's been good, but he I don't know if he's had a game over like 24 points in his NFL career for fantasy. Like, I feel like he's been a safe floor, low ceiling guy his entire career. Chase Brown has been super high upside all year. Kyron Williams has been a touchdown machine for the last 2 seasons and has the highest workload of any running back in football. So I would go with Kyron and Chase here.
Yep. I'll agree with Nick on that one. All right, guys. Again, this is the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast. We are live every single Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, available on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook to answer all of your fantasy football questions. Keep dropping them in the chat. If you haven't already, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that bell icon so you get notifications every time we're live or every time we drop a new video. We give you 2 videos during the week available on Tuesdays and Fridays. Those videos are pre-recorded. The audio and video version is on our YouTube channel, and then the audio podcast version is available on all podcasting platforms. If you're driving in the car to work, you listen to the Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Anchor. From the Sean, Allen, 21 on my bench. Damn, didn't realize he did that good. Which Allen?
Keenan Allen. I think he had like
Keenan
3
Allen.
catches for 2 touchdowns. Like he had some
yes,
stupid
Keenan
play.
Allen. He was my potatoes stuff. No, not what was.
I think he was he was something. Let's see.
He was something good. He was something good. I know he was. So for you guys that don't listen to the weekly shows, which you definitely should, we gave you guys a Thanksgiving special that we dropped on Wednesday, and we basically each did 5.
I think it was your stuffing.
Thanksgiving dishes, and we spoke about 5 players we thought would either produce or not produce, whatever the description was. And I told you guys all to play Keenan Allen due to his massive target share in November. I did not play Keenan Allen. I did face him in a league, but I did not play him in the league that I did have him. I played George Pickens, Terry McLaurin, and they think maybe Waddle over him. So
you want to know, Nick, your biggest strength is? Your biggest strength is giving great fantasy takes that you never follow through on your own teams.
Yes.
It's incredible. Nick's best takes he doesn't listen to. Like, for example, stash Bucky Irving. Did not get him anywhere.
Well, to be fair, I should have drafted him. I could not stash him anywhere. That I do agree with your take of me not following my own takes, but that one wasn't possible for me to follow. But I do agree with
man. I don't know.
No. My biggest miss on the entire season in terms of my own fantasy takes is that I just gassed up Joe Mixon the entire offseason and didn't draft him anywhere. I mean, I drafted other guys either ahead of him or around him, Kenneth Walker and, probably T. Higgins in a couple leagues, DK. But that was my biggest miss on the season in terms of pounding the desk for stuff. And that wasn't just me pounding the desk for like content purposes. I really did believe in Joe Mixon. I did want him. And like when me and Nick mocked, I was getting Joe Mixon everywhere that I could. But
so was everybody else. Everybody reached on him and everybody hit him. It happens.
Played Bowers in 2 leagues. Oh, I guess Bowers had a good game, no?
You played against him in 2 leagues.
That's what I assumed, yeah.
Based off the emoji.
Whose ceiling would you rather have, Devontae Adams or Taysom Hill? Okay, well, Taysom Hill is the bigger ceiling, but he also has the lowest floor. I mean, you're looking at either a 3-point performance or a 30-point performance. I would rather play Devontae Adams. If you're basing it solely on ceiling, it's Taysom Hill. But I think it'd be crazy to start Taysom Hill over Devontae Adams.
It would be crazy. And if you're right, Nick and I owe you an apology, but it would be absolutely insane to make that call. I love it. Go for it. Make your own decision there. But you just cannot.
But if you have already faced the Cowboys defense, Tyreek Hill, Josh Jacobs, and you're down 80 points and projected to lose by 30, then take the ceiling, because at that point,
no, there's no way.
Could be.
No.
All right. We don't have questions in the queue at the moment. Keep asking those questions and we'll prioritize them. We're going to keep going to our game-by-game preview. Next up is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Carolina Panthers. No real injuries to mention in this one. I will tell you this, Nick. I'm about to pull Joe Burrow out of my lineup for Baker Mayfield. I don't know what Burrow's stats are against the Steelers, but I don't know. That just screams low Burrow game to me. So I think I'm going to put my man Baker Mayfield in there.
Let's check. We can check both because they're division matchups. So let's see. Joe Burrow versus the Steelers.
I mean, Joe Burrow's a quarterback 3 on the season, even with the bye week, an average of 22.2 fantasy points. Baker Mayfield's quarterback 5 with the bye week, and he has 21.7 average. They're very, very close. They're very close.
He actually did not play them in 2023 because of his injury.
Oh, yes, he did get hurt.
The last time he played them was 2022. And in those games, he averaged 345 yards per game with 3 touchdowns per game.
Oh, my God.
Over the course of his career, he averages 2.5 touchdowns in this matchup, over 250 yards, 65 completion percentage.
I am projected to win. I'm projected to win 159 to 137. I don't know why my projection's so high, though. I mean,
I will really say, though, in those 2 games, he did have 6 total interceptions.
That's gonna be some bad minuses in this league. I think I might play Baker. That's gonna be a game time. That's gonna be a stinker tinker time for me.
And we will see Baker Mayfield versus the Panthers.
Highly recommend watching the league. By the way, that's where the reference comes from about that stinker tinker time.
Baker Mayfield against the Panthers in his career, which also includes his 1 game in Cleveland in this matchup. He averages 190 yards and only has 2 touchdowns and 1 interception in his 3 games in this matchup. So,
yuck.
Baker 0 upside in this matchup historically.
From Stanley, Kirk Cousins or Josh Allen. PPR worried about the weather. Yeah, Josh Allen. He's weather-proof, matchup-proof, everything-proof. And congratulations to Josh Allen. He's the ultimate winner this weekend, by the way. I'm not sure if you saw the news, Nick, but he got engaged to Haley Steinfeld. So I don't care if Josh Allen's dropped 0 fantasy points. Number one, because he's not on any of my fantasy teams. And number two, because when you're engaged to Haley Steinfeld, it doesn't matter what your fantasy score is. You are a winner. You are the winner of the weekend. Okay. All right. Next 1 o'clock game we have to talk about here. I just realized we actually jumped down to the Steelers.
Yeah, we way skipped a couple games.
Steelers and the Bengals. Really no injury news in this one. I think the Bengals. Oh no, Logan Wilson is questionable. That's the other injury that I looked at. But anyway, no injuries in this one. I think you're just playing your guys. I mean, you know who you're playing from the Steelers and the Bengals at this point.
Yeah, there is one thing I want to check on because I noticed it last week. So in the Steelers-Browns matchup last week, the leading rusher for the Steelers was Jaylen Warren. It was the highest snap percentage that he took from Najee Harris all season long. And he had more targets in the game, more receiving yards, more rushing yards. He got the touchdown of the game. So just something to take note of and keep your eye on. It might have been 1 week wonder, but just keep an eye on it.
All right. Next game we have here, the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. No real injuries to talk about in this one. I guess Trevor has his left shoulder injury and he's questionable, but he's projected to play. I'm interested to see exactly how Trevor looks coming off the bye and the injury.
Yeah, a few weeks rest too. The Jags typically compete in this matchup. So, and the Texans, they have not been the projected Texans that everybody thought they would be going into the year. They kind of remind me a little bit of the Cardinals and the Vikings from a few years back, where the record is just way better than the team actually is. So we will see what they actually look like for football. But for fantasy football, I want to see what these Jags do in this matchup. I do think they play each other another time later in the year before the season's over. It could be wrong on that, but I feel like they have one more division matchup against one another.
I think they do. So John Caldwell tweeted us to add some context. So his lineup at the moment is, well, let's see. His projection is 52% to win, 145 to 143. He already has Goff, who's played, Tyreek Hill's played, and Kelsey has played. So he's already scored 55 fantasy points. He has Bucky Irving, Kenneth Walker. Those are locks. His other receiver in the lineup is Devontae Adams. His flexes are Taysom Hill and George Pickens with the Broncos defense and Chris Boswell. Bench, you're looking at Algier, Najee Harris, TJ Hawkinson, Deontay Johnson. I would still get Najee Harris in there in the flex for Taysom Hill. I don't like that you have Pickens in there as well, but I would rather get the upside of Najee Harris in there instead of Taysom Hill. That's me though.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't want to risk your season on Taysom Hill.
Yep. All right. From Dale Sullivan, Younghoe Koo, Jason Myers, or another kicker off the waivers this week. I think I saw something that the Chargers are really tough against kickers. And Koo actually hasn't played well this season.
Yeah,
Jason Myers is okay. I watch him every week. I mean, I don't even know who else would be available on waivers. It's such a crapshoot with kickers every single week. I usually just Google like which NFL teams have kicked the most field goals or attempted the most field goals, and I'll just pick somebody within the top 10 that has a high over under this week. Like Tyler Bass, I wouldn't play Tyler Bass. Like he's up there, but in the snow game, I wouldn't play Tyler Bass. I wouldn't play Jake Moody because they're both in the snow game. I just don't know who I could even.
So here are some of the teams that allow the most points to the kickers. It is the Atlanta defense, the Carolina defense, Baltimore's defense.
Maybe Jake Elliott. I mean, he's missed a couple kicks this season, but maybe Jake Elliott.
The Colts defense. Yeah, I mean that's it.
A lot of these kickers that you're naming or teams you're naming, I know that those kickers are gone in most leagues. So I look for them every single week. I think if you have to roll one of these, roll with Myers, but the kicker's just so tricky. It's such a crapshoot every single week.
Agreed.
All right. Next game, the Arizona Cardinals going up against the Minnesota Vikings. It is Call of Duty season, by the way. I do want to let you guys know about that.
Yes, it is.
There is no real injuries to mention in this one. I think you're just kind of playing your guys like you have been.
Yeah.
Nothing I'm worried about.
This one's a straightforward game.
Colts at the Patriots. Josh Downs is out with a shoulder surgery. That's big for the Colts because he's kind of been Anthony Richardson's favorite target. The Patriots, Damari Douglas is questionable with an ankle. I think he's going to play, and the rest of the injuries here are defense. Kind of the same thing. I think you're playing your guys. I think Taylor is still probably in your lineup. Maybe you could play Anthony Richardson. Drake May is probably playable. Hunter Henry, Stevenson. I think it's just play your guys kind of thing.
Totally agree.
My Crab Hawks going up against the New York Jets. There's a big game for both teams. Big game for me and Nick because Nick needs his Jets to Nick needs his Jets to lose, and I need my Seahawks to win. So the opposite result actually will.
No. I after all the slander I have heard this year from the other side of the state, from the south side of the country, from the Florida man over here, there is nothing more that I want than to end Seattle's postseason dreams.
Okay. And that's fine. That's fine because you'll talk your smack to me, but then when April rolls around and you have pick 12 in the draft, I'm going to be laughing when you don't get a good prospect.
Hey, listen, that's totally fine. It is more important to me at this point that I ruin Nick's season because Nick has held so much over me and so much shit talk all year that all I need is for us to win. So anytime he says anything about Aaron Rodgers, about our kicker, about our coach, about our owner, anything like that, I can just say, well, what happened in week 13 of the season? What happened?
I said nothing about the kicker. You said everything about the kicker. But I will say, if the Seahawks lose this game, they'll be 6-6. The Jets will be 4-8, and the Seahawks have a tough schedule coming up. I mean, they have the Packers, they have the Vikings, they have the Cardinals.
Great point from Joe here, because this feels totally right. We're going to win 5 of the next 6, lose the draft spot.
Yes. So Joe is getting to my point. This game could decide who has a better pick in the draft. So if we lose, it's going to button hook to April. I'm going to laugh when we're in the chat and Nick's like, no, he took my guy. And I'm celebrating. The Seahawks took the guy, took like the tackle or the defensive player that they wanted or whoever. But yes, we do have a fun game today. All right,
give me Shador and Prime. Give me Shador and Coach Prime.
It's not going to happen. You're gonna be picking at like 12. They're both going to be gone.
You're probably.
The Seahawks. They actually are in trouble on the offensive line. Anthony Bradford's out with an ankle. Stone Forsythe's out with a hand. So they're down 2 guys on the already terrible offensive line. They're one of the best linebackers. So the Seahawks are in a little bit of injury trouble, and the Jets don't look much better. I mean, Tyron Smith's out with a neck injury, just went on IR. I don't know if Jake Hansen starts for you guys. He's a guard. He's questionable. Breece Hall's questionable with a knee, but he looks good to go. I actually did pick up Braylon Allen on Wednesday when he wasn't practicing, but he's going to play. But I say play your guys in this one, but I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game, Nick. I do think I don't think there's going to be a lot of fantasy points to go around.
I will say I am interested because you do have the Jets coming off the bye, Seattle flying after a division matchup, West Coast to East Coast after 2 huge wins. I will not be putting any money on the Jets for the rest of my life, most likely. But I will say this is a good upset spot, and Seattle barely favored in this game by a point. But
that sounds like a fair spread. So I think it'll be a close game.
I agree. I think it's going to be low scoring, and I do think the Jets should have the edge here.
I think they probably do have a slight edge based off injuries alone and the fact that the Seahawks don't show up to the second half. But and I'm not trying to dunk on Nick's Jets, but they've had some really bad losses this year. I mean, Denver looks better now, but at that point in the year, they shouldn't have lost to Denver, and they definitely shouldn't have lost that game to New England. That was a really
yeah.
And then the New England one, I think, was coming off the Texans loss. I think the Texans win. I'm sorry, they beat the Texans. So anyway.
We got a couple quick questions in the chat, Nick.
Yeah, let's get to a couple quick questions we got here.
Or statements.
Statements. We got a couple statements. Shador's going to the Giants at Neighbors. That'd be good for my dynasty team.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either. I think he's going to the Raiders.
So this is to me. I love telling this story, and it is why I despise the Giants franchise. It was Nick. Do you know about so pretty much in the Colin Kaepernick era and everything that was going on in the league, the Giants were the only team to not start a quarterback of color. So what they chose to do was end Eli Manning's Iron Man greatest streak in the history of football to play Geno Smith, their backup quarterback, for 2 drives and then bench him again for Eli Manning to finish out his retirement run of his season. Absolutely despicable decision by ownership with pressure. But historically, the Giants do not hire coaches of color and do not start quarterbacks of color. I do not think they're going to bring in Shedeur Sanders for Brian Dable. I will put my stamp on that. And I think it is more likely that they pay Sam Darnold this offseason and take a different position of need. Maybe if they're that high, they get Travis Hunter, which would be a lot of fun, honestly. But I do not think that they are going to go the route that you want them to. I don't think Shedeur is New York Giant.
All right.
Well, you got 2 comments from Stanley here. Stanley, I'm going to call you out now on the show. First off, my name is written right there. It's with a K. We'll say that. And yes, based off the hat and my miserable fandom, yes, I do live in New York. And Nick Go Cobby, Nick does live in Florida, as I did just call him the Florida man.
Yeah,
but
based
based
on my Seahawks. Yeah.
He's a Seahawks fan from New York.
Geographically, the farthest team for me at the moment.
Yeah, Nick has rotated his fan bases. He changes them more than he changes.
That's not true. That's not true. I've been a Seahawks fan ever since I was wearing kids' clothes.
Nick, quick question for you. How many different baseball teams have you rooted for?
How many different baseball teams did I actually watch them play baseball? Because I did not watch an Arizona Diamondbacks team when I was 7 years old. That just didn't happen.
Nick was a Diamondbacks fan. He was a Mariners fan.
Not a Diamondbacks fan.
He was a Yankees fan. He was a Mets fan. He might have had a Phillies run for a little bit.
No, I did not have a Phillies.
Go, Kobe. You tell me in the comments as our moderator.
I was Joe was the Phillies fan, and Mr. over there, I think you had a Mets hat on at one point too, and we both had Mets hats on at Shea Stadium together. Actually,
I was born into Mets fandom. We
were both born into Mets fandom
in 2007 or 8, and I have not looked back. I have been loyal to my teams, although I will say there are now odds on my next football fandom, depending on how the Jets respond this offseason, because we could totally hop on that Lions bandwagon. We like Justin Herbert. We will see.
All right. 49ers getting cooked by Josh Allen tonight. I hope so. From Dale, Dawson Knox and Kincaid is out. I do want to mention that. Dawson Knox or Pat Fryermuth. Russell Wilson doesn't throw to his tight ends. But I don't snow game with Knox. I think I'd still go with Knox. Russell Wilson doesn't throw to his tight ends.
I agree.
Yes, Nick does have a brick at Citi Field. You're correct. Is your name on the brick?
I do also have ownership of the Green Bay Packers. I own 0.00019% of the Green Bay Packers. So a brick means nothing, just like my ownership of the team. It was really a business decision if you think about it.
The Giacobis have a brick too, but I don't think my name's on it. So it's a very loose brick. All right. Anyway, Seahawks, Jets. I would just play your guys. I mean, you can't really bench DK. You know, he's a bit dinged up, but he's good to go. You can't bench JSN. You don't bench
totally bench DK if you have a pivot.
Yeah, but who do you think the pivot is in a 12-man league? I mean, give me a pivot that you think is Westbrook Akine. I wouldn't play him over DK, would you?
No, but there's definitely teams that are deep. I mean, I'll tell you one of my teams where I'm benching DK.
Is it a 10-man or 12-man?
It is, let's see. I think it's a 10-man dynasty. Here's my wide receivers: CeeDee Lamb, Brian Thomas, DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams. So
yes, if you roster like that, then yes,
potential to bench him.
If your roster's that deep, I personally don't have any rosters that would be that deep. That's just me though. And then for the Jets, I think you're still playing. You know, I don't think I'll say this: I don't think either quarterback is playable in this game. I think there's better options at your quarterback.
Oh yeah, I don't think you can play either.
I think your skill position guys are all in, but from quarterbacks, I wouldn't want to play either. Next game, Tennessee Titans at the Washington Commanders. And guys, keep asking your questions in the chat. We do appreciate chatting with you guys, but if you have any questions, we will bump up your questions. Marshall Lattimore's out with the hamstring. Austin Eckler's out with the concussion. That's all we really got in this game. I mean, I think you're still playing, you know, Mr. Breakaway Speed, Tony Pollard. You're playing Calvin Ridley. And then for the Commanders, you're still probably playing Jaden Daniels and McLaurin and Ertz is very playable, and Brian Robinson. Although this is going to be a tough defensive matchup, I think, for the Commanders.
I agree. I think that it'll be a lot closer than people would expect the game to be throughout the game. Spread's 5.5, but I could see Tennessee covering, and I could
too.
see the Commanders like getting the field goal to put them up the full touchdown with like a couple minutes left. So I wouldn't touch the line. But I do think Tennessee is going to keep this game a lot closer throughout the game. The big question is Jeremy McNichols, and I do want to see what happens with Tajay Spears because he had a lot of workload the last couple weeks and a lot of snap share coming away from Tony Pollard. I don't know. I don't think they're going to fully transition the backfield, but if it's more of a 50-50 split throughout the playoffs, Tony Pollard could be benched for some other flexible options.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers. We already kind of spoke about this. Play your Bucks.
Yeah, we jumped down to that one. Yeah.
Play your Bucks. That's all I really got for that one. Is it? There's still not a Panther I'm comfortable playing except for maybe Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. I agree at this point. Although I will say the receiving options have looked better. The offense has looked much better.
So they have looked better. I don't know about comfortability when you need a win at this point.
I feel like and you see it at the end of the year, the teams that aren't making the playoffs, like if someone gets dinged up, they shut them down for the year. I could totally see one of the Panthers being the waiver wire guy that you pick up and playing in that spot. So I don't mind stashing them.
Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr., Pickens need one. I'm not even saying Devontae Smith because of the injury. It's always Big Mike. He should be in your lineup every week. Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans should be your starters every week, and then you figure out the flex from there.
Agreed. Real quick to Stanley. Yep. Sorry, your Sixers suck. Nick and I, big Knicks fans over here out on the show. One of the few teams that Nick and I align on. And we were very happy to end your year last year. We're very happy that you're going to miss the playoffs this year. And we will forever root against that franchise. So just so you know,
I'm not anti-Philly. I actually do like Philly fans, but I do not like
me
the Sixers.
Too.
I hate the Sixers. I can't stand the Sixers. They just like they're so whiny and just like it's just like I can't stand the Sixers.
But Stanley is one of our biggest supporters of the pod. Just so you know, we will always be rooting against your Sixers. Even
we do like the Eagles, though. I feel like we both kind of support the Eagles in a little bit.
We like the Birds. We like the Birds.
Maybe it's because we always have a fantasy player on that team. One of us always has somebody on that team, so maybe that's
yeah.
All right, the Los Angeles Rams at the New Orleans Saints started the 4:00 slot. Tyler Higbee's out. Not sure how much that matters, but mentioning it, that's really it. I think you just play your guys in this game too. I don't know who you're playing from the Saints besides Kamara comfortably, but I guess.
You also have MVS, who's been on a bit of a heater. So I'm actually comfortable playing MVS with how high this over-under game is, and he has had those deep balls going his way, those deep touchdowns. No Chris Olave. It's good upside for him the rest of the year.
Okay. All right. Philadelphia Eagles at the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to call this the Sunday Night Football game. It's not the Sunday Night Football game. Defensive player questions. I mean, we could try.
Go for it. Let's do it. IDP.
Neither of us play IDP. We could try.
I used to play IDP.
I never did. Nobody ever wanted to do one. But my man Deshaun does have a picture with the wise man.
I did see
the OTC big win last for the OTC. Throw your defensive questions in there. We could attempt to answer them, but
we'll do our best.
Play IDP. So. Eagles Ravens. I will say the Eagles are tough against everything. I would not bench your Ravens, but they are tough against everything. So temper the expectations. I think this is going to be a big temper expectations game. My hot take is I don't even know what the over under is, but I think it's going to be an under game just because of the hype that's around every player in this game.
It's a 51.5 highest over under of the week. Baltimore historically
smash that under.
I mean, Lamar is like 22-1 against the NFC in his career. Yes. So we'll see if he can nix this season for Philly. I do think Philly matches up very, very well against them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Philly was one of the teams that pulled it off. You also have Hurts, so you get to practice a little bit against what this backfield looks like. That Baltimore secondary is rough. If this game goes historically how the Ravens games against the NFC go, it's going to be Philly playing catch up for most of the game and scoring fantasy points. So it could hit the over. I think it's going to be a very good fantasy week for both these teams.
From B-Dub the Boss, he wants Stroud or Justin Herbert. Herbert's been the better player over the past 6 weeks, but I'm 99% sure that Stroud's going to have the better matchup. Jaguars allow the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, an average of 23.3. Herbert's going up against Arizona. They are ninth best against quarterbacks. I think I would play Stroud. He has a really good matchup this week against Jacksonville.
I'm fine with that play, but I think it's either way. I mean, it's upside both sides. Yeah, I'm fine going either way on that. I'll lean with Nick there.
All right, here's our first IDP question of the season. Roquan Smith, Jordan Fuller, Caden Elias, and Henry Toto. I'll go with Roquan Smith and Jordan Fuller.
I would not go with Roquan Smith. I know he's the biggest name on the board, but I do not like him going up against that Eagles offensive line. He
should get a lot of tackles, no? You get a couple tackles.
He might get a few on Saquon, but he's not going to be able to sack the quarterback, which is bigger for him in this matchup. The other, I do like Jordan Fuller. The other two, I will be honest, no freaking clue on them. But I do not like Roquan Smith. I don't like going up against that Eagles offensive line.
Okay,
that's the best I can give you here.
I keep getting this matchup wrong the entire show. It's now a bit. It's the Falcons that Herbert's playing, not Arizona.
Yes.
I still think Stroud's the better play based off the fact the Jags are very bad against quarterbacks, and I've been picking on the Jags for about a month now. I gotta keep picking on the Jags at that point until the wheel falls off.
Sure.
The Texans are a level above the Jaguars, like 2 levels probably.
Yeah.
From Surf, 16-team league with a deep bench. Pick 2, please. Devontae Smith, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, Amari Cooper, Kamani Vidal, and Keon Coleman. So this is a situation where I would like to get Devontae Smith in there, but I just don't think he's going to play.
So here's what I would do. I would play Nick Westbrook-Ikine because I like
I'm in agreement
there. I would then wait to see later on if you can play Devontae Smith, play him. If not, pivot to I would go Keon Coleman over Amari Cooper.
I agree with Nick, except I would go with Amari Cooper over Keon Coleman. I would play whichever Bill you're more comfortable with if Smith is playing. And every report is stating that Devontae Smith will probably not play.
I want to jump down to Deshaun real quick. I love Demario Davis, former Jet. Ton of tackles with that Saints team. Good pass coverage linebacker. Kyron, that team runs the ball way too much, feeds the receivers up the middle of the field. That is a good upside for a safe floor from Demario in this game. I do like that. I don't talk much IDP, but Demario Davis, he's been one of my guys since he was a Jet. So I'm all over that play this week.
All right, Sunday Night Football, San Francisco 49ers at the Buffalo Bills. So a lot of injuries for the Niners here. Brock Purdy's a right shoulder injury is questionable. He is slated to play. Trent Williams will be out with an ankle. Maybe manage your defense, but Nick Bosa is out with a hip. And then for the Bills, Dalton Kincaid is out. Keon Coleman is questionable with a wrist. Matt Milano just got activated off the IR. And the weather is the biggest concern about this game. So I would not play either kicker. I don't think I would play Purdy. You could still play Josh Allen. I would try to avoid Bills receivers at all costs if you can. I would try to avoid San Francisco receivers not named Deebo Samuel at all costs as well. And if you can bench Deebo, I would. I'm cool with McCaffrey and I'm cool with James Cook.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. I said it earlier in the show for some of you that aren't here. I do think that Brock Purdy is not going to play. I don't think he's officially been ruled out yet. But the line did move 4 points last week when Brock Purdy was ruled out. It has moved 4 points since the start of this week. And it's not because people are betting the Bills. It's because of the injury. The line doesn't move that much unless there's something like that.
All right, another IDP question. Start 1, Tyrese Knight, Quincy Williams, or Julian Love. I will start Quincy Williams.
Yeah, I'd go with my Jets linebacker. We know Seattle's going to run the ball a ton, so good upside for tackles there. He has gotten a few picks over the last few years too, so a little bit more upside there.
Joe asked if we'd entertain a fantasy hockey question if you want, but I mean, we're kind of like Stephen A. Smith. If you've ever seen Stephen A. Smith talk hockey, that's kind of what you're getting from us if you want to attempt that.
Yeah,
Monday Night Football.
Not giving you any advice.
Monday Night Football. Cleveland Browns at the Denver Broncos. Really no. Cedric Tillman's out with a concussion. That's the biggest injury you have in this one.
Yeah.
But nothing else there. So I think you kind of just play your Broncos and maybe don't play your Browns except for Nick Chubb.
Excuse me, Jerry Jeudy revenge game. Are we not getting all over that matchup?
I forgot about it, honestly.
Pat Surtain, he's been practicing against them for the last 4 years. Going to cook him.
Yeah. Probably. I wouldn't play Jerry Jeudy.
I like that one. I like him as a sleeper.
All right. All right, guys. So that is our live show for week 13. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the support. If you haven't already, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and hit that bell icon so you have notifications every time we go live on YouTube or drop a new video. We'll give you 2 videos throughout the week, including this week, one on Tuesday, one on Friday, available both on YouTube and in audio and video format, and then available on all our audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and Anchor. Follow us on social media if you have any other questions throughout the week, throughout the day, etc. PrimeTimeFFPod Twitter, Primetime Fantasy Football Podcast on Instagram. Thank you all for the support. Thank you for rocking with us every single week. Best of luck in week 13, and we'll talk to you guys on Tuesday.